I just talked to the guys here and all our viewers and listeners about my theory or my philosophy when it comes to drafting players and what the NFL has become. And to me, it's all about the passer, the guy that protects the passer, and the guy that rushes the passer. And there are a bunch of offensive linemen this year that fit that role. And I don't want to see teams reach for flashy Ferraris and wide receivers and, no need running backs when you got offensive linemen that need to protect your passer. What are your thoughts about that? And where do you think tonight goes in terms of what happens after all the quarterbacks go?
Well, listen, we all know quarterback's the most important position. I think there's some debate as to what the second most important position is. I've often said I think it's D-line, because I think an individual D-line or a group of defensive linemen can have a bigger impact than the O-line. But I think O-line's third. I agree with you, I guess, Ryan, because I think it's quarterback 1, D-line 2, O-line 3. The thing that's interesting about O-line versus D-line, though, is if you have one outstanding D-lineman, like an Aaron Donald or whoever, right, they can really make a huge impact. But if you have one outstanding offensive lineman, that's nice. It's really nice to have that. But the reality is what really matters is how that unit does as a group. In other words, you're almost only as good as your worst O-lineman up front. I'd rather have 5 average offensive linemen than have 2 studs and 2 duds, if that makes sense, right? So whereas drafting a D-lineman high, that one guy can make a huge impact. On the O-line, you really just can't have anybody that stinks. Like, you can't have anybody out there that can't play. As long as all 5 guys are average or better, you'll actually be in pretty good shape.
Well, I think that's exactly right, and that's why when teams are or fans are clamoring about no, don't draft another offensive lineman. We got one a year ago. No, you build the best offensive line you can, in whatever that takes. So when I hear people coming out of Cincinnati saying that they're going to draft Jamar Chase at number 5 rather than Penei Sewell to bolster that offensive line, which was the liability a year ago that got their franchise quarterback on the gurney headed out of the stadium, it shocks me. What do you think the Bengals will do, but what should they do at number 5 when they have their name called?
Well, so that's interesting, right, for a couple different reasons. Because, number one, it's a pretty deep O-line group, but it's also a pretty deep wide receiver group. So if you think, I know people out there, Ryan, that will say Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver prospect since at least 2015. I had a guy on the Fantasy Feast podcast who, tracks all the numbers. What Jamar Chase did at age 19 in the SEC is just insane. So if you're the Bengals, you could look at it like, man, Jamar Chase is so much better than any of the other receivers. And at the top of round 2, we could still get a really good starting offensive lineman, whether that's Landon Dickerson inside or Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame at tackle, Sam Cosmi from Texas. So I think, and if you're only looking at the first-round pick, I think you lean towards the offensive line. But if you're looking at those as a combo over the first couple rounds, you have to decide, would you rather have Chase and Eichenberg or Sewell and like Rondale Moore or one of these slot receivers?
Right.
I really do think that's how a lot of these teams look at it.
And that's how I would look at it, too. I'd look at an opportunity just like it is with a running back in that second or third round. You can get those guys. Justin Jefferson a year ago was as good as anybody, but that didn't change the wins and losses, right? He wasn't the deciding factor that puts because they still need somebody to get him the football, and the quarterback play had to have been better there. So that's what we're looking at.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.